September 28, 2025. Ukraine's Birds of the Magyar unit detects 3 Russian soldiers entering a building. The unit immediately directs an FPV kamikaze drone toward the location of the enemy soldiers. The drone operator enters the building where the enemy soldiers are hiding. The Russian soldiers are shocked. Shortly thereafter, a large explosion occurs. The high destructive power of the explosive on the kamikaze drone neutralizes the enemy soldiers. The building is destroyed. September 29, 2025. Ukrainian soldiers spot Russian infantry near a ruined building in the South Slobozhansky region. An FPV kamikaze drone rapidly heads towards the enemy soldier. The drone operator quickly and silently marks the Russian soldier and glides towards him. The Russian soldier spots the kamikaze drone at the last moment and immediately opens fire. However, the drone operator had approached so silently that it was already too late. Seconds later, the kamikaze drone hit the Russian soldier hard, causing a huge explosion. September 28, 2025. In the Pokrovsk direction, where the most intense clashes have taken place in recent days in the Ukraine-Russia war, a Ukrainian Army FPV kamikaze drone successfully attacked a Desert Cross 1003 light off-road transport vehicle used by Russian Marines. As a result of this attack, enemy soldiers were forced to retreat from the area, while the vehicle was rendered completely unusable. This attack by Ukraine was essentially a declaration of presence. September 25, 2025. One of the Ukrainian Army's most powerful weapons is undoubtedly the German-made Leopard 2A4 tank. This tank has proven itself capable of handling the most difficult tasks. The tank crew, emboldened by this tank, can fearlessly enter enemy positions. The tank crew had received information that Russian troops were hiding in residential areas south of Pokrovsk. Following orders from the command center, the crew moved towards the enemy's hiding places. Shortly thereafter, they arrived at the buildings where Russian soldiers were hiding. The crew began firing at enemy positions. Bombs launched from the tank began to level the buildings where the enemy was hiding. The crew fired from a safe distance, being very careful against possible traps. After successive attacks, the buildings where the Russian soldiers were hiding were completely destroyed. The crew, having successfully completed their mission, returned safely to their position. The Leopard continued to successfully carry out its mission, instilling fear in the enemy. September 26, 2025. Soldiers repelled an FPV attack in this way in the Kharkiv region, where the Russian army continues its intense attacks. While Ukrainian soldiers were advancing in an off-road vehicle, Russian forces launched an attack on Ukrainian soldiers with FPV kamikaze drones. One of the soldiers in the vehicle immediately spotted the enemy's kamikaze drone and began firing his weapon. After several shots, the infantry successfully destroyed the Russian forces' attack drone. September 29, 2025. An FPV kamikaze drone detects a Russian soldier inside a tunnel in the direction of Pokrovsk. When the enemy soldier spots the Ukrainian drone, he flees to the other end of the tunnel. The drone operator immediately makes a quick maneuver and rapidly heads towards the other end of the tunnel. The enemy soldier then turns in the opposite direction again. The Russian infantryman panicked greatly due to the sound of the FPV drone. The Russian infantryman immediately tried to escape by exiting the tunnel. However, the kamikaze drone moved very quickly and managed to catch the enemy soldier in a short time. A violent explosion occurred. The enemy soldier, who wanted to infiltrate the border area, was again targeted by a kamikaze drone in the border area. The Ukrainian unit attacked the enemy soldier with a second FPV kamikaze drone. With this new attack, the Russian infantry was completely neutralized. September 30, 2025. The Ukrainian Air Force deployed GBU-39 bombs for destruction once again. The Air Force took action in the morning based on information received from intelligence units. A Russian command center had been detected on the southern front. Air Force pilots immediately took action and took off in their fighter jets. When the pilots entered the attack range of the Russian target, they precisely entered the coordinates into the bombs. After a short wait, the precision-guided GBU-39 bombs were fired and headed towards the enemy target. Seconds later, these bombs reached their target and caused a huge explosion. This violent explosion caused utter destruction in the Russian forces' command center. All enemy elements were eliminated. September 28, 2025. In Pokrovsk, known as one of the hot conflict zones on Ukraine's eastern front, the Russian army continues to experiment with different methods and tools to attack Ukrainian positions. However, Ukrainian soldiers are monitoring this intense activity in the region moment by moment. Reconnaissance drones track enemy vehicles as soon as they move. When the enemy is at its weakest, FPV kamikaze drones come into play. FPV drone operators closely track enemy vehicles and quickly launch attacks. Operators prefer to approach the enemy very quickly and silently. Then, with a sudden attack, Russian targets are destroyed almost instantly. The Ukrainian Phoenix Brigade, operating in the Pokrovsk direction, severely disrupted the enemy's supply and movement capabilities with these attacks. In this operation, the brigade completely destroyed 2 motorcycles, 2 UAZ-type vehicles, 4 cars, and 2 pickups, along with the occupiers inside. When the brigade's drone operators detect enemy supply vehicles in particular, they pursue the enemy with great determination. Russian supply vehicles try to move faster when they spot kamikaze drones. However, the kamikaze drone is faster. Ultimately, the enemy vehicle being engulfed in flames becomes the most concrete example of this. September 30th, 2025. Ukrainian soldiers succeeded in completely destroying the Grad MLRS system, an important weapon belonging to the Russian army, in a critical operation. After the attack, this enemy system showed a huge explosive effect. With the damage to the ammunition in the Grad system, the intensity of the explosion in the enemy system caused even greater destruction. The Grad MLRS is one of the Russian Army's most common artillery weapons. It is a system capable of hitting a wide area in seconds with a salvo of 40 rockets. September 26, 2025. The Typhoon unit, affiliated with the Ukrainian National Guard, is drawing attention with its night operations against Russian forces. Following intelligence reports from reconnaissance units, the unit used advanced drone systems to destroy secret and important targets of the Russian army. These drones were able to hit their targets with high accuracy even at night. In these operations, the Typhoon unit launched an intense attack on enemy targets using bomb-carrying drones. The bombings carried out by drone operators on Russian targets turned the area into daylight at night. Violent explosions caused massive destruction at enemy targets. The Russian army launched an attack with armored vehicles in the Zaporizhia region. However, Ukrainian reconnaissance units detected the enemy's attack attempt early on. Therefore, preparations were made to attack the route of the Russian armored vehicles. The units used powerful tank mines and FPV kamikaze drones to destroy these vehicles, which were covered with additional armor. When the Russian armored vehicles entered range, they were met with a powerful attack by Ukrainian forces. Explosions were rising one after another in the enemy armored vehicles. Ukrainian troops caused great panic among the enemy crew with powerful tank mines and kamikaze drones. The crew made sudden maneuvers to escape the attack zone after a series of violent explosions. However, the Ukrainian army's FPV drone operators carried out highly accurate attacks on the enemy army's armored convoy. As a result of the coordinated attacks by the units, the Russian army's armored vehicles were engulfed in black smoke and began to turn into piles of scrap metal. The Ukrainian army's determined defense quickly scattered and shattered the enemy. September 29, 2025. Perhaps one of the most successful FPV drone teams on the Ukrainian Army's battlefronts is the FPV drone team called Worm Busters. This team has recently been very successful in stopping Russian infantry moving from forested areas towards Ukrainian positions. They work day and night to stop enemy activities. The team also uses powerful ammunition and kamikaze drones to launch single-strike elimination attacks against the enemy. Here is a Russian position. Shortly after, a Russian infantryman emerges from this position and tries to get away. However, the reconnaissance team begins to pursue the enemy. The Russian soldier advances through dense vegetation and between trees in wooded areas. His goal is to avoid being detected by reconnaissance drones. However, an observation drone had already marked him. An FPV kamikaze drone was waiting, ready to attack. Finally, the Russian soldier emerges into open terrain. The kamikaze drone, ready for attack, immediately sprang into action. It locked onto the enemy soldier on its radar and marked him. Shortly after, it launched a fierce attack. This powerful strike caused a massive explosion. The Russian infantryman was wounded by the blast and immediately chose to disappear among the trees. However, the Ukrainian unit is still pursuing the enemy. As long as the enemy soldier does not surrender, it is impossible for him to escape this unit. September 28, 2025. A Russian military Lancet kamikaze drone was moving towards Ukraine for an attack. However, Ukraine destroyed the enemy's kamikaze drone like this. September 2025. The Ukrainian Army's FPV kamikaze drones continue to destroy Russian Army armored vehicles. Ukrainian soldiers use advanced FPV kamikaze drones on the battlefield, shattering enemy armored vehicles worth millions of dollars into scrap metal. Reconnaissance drones constantly patrol the warfront, quickly locating enemy targets. Moving enemy vehicles are closely tracked. Ukrainian FPV kamikaze drone operators resolutely target the enemy. The targeted enemy targets soon give way to huge explosions. Armored vehicles and supply vehicles that have been attacked begin to be destroyed in huge flames after the attack. Ukrainian kamikaze drones also completely scrap the vehicles abandoned by the enemy, preventing their reuse. Ukrainian soldiers are not only destroying enemy ground vehicles, they are also detecting and destroying Russian military unmanned aerial vehicles in the air. The Russian army is attempting to carry out reconnaissance missions and attacks with a large number of unmanned aerial vehicles. However, Ukrainian defenses are constantly tracking enemy vehicles. The Ukrainian army is prepared for enemy attacks in every area of the warfront. Although the Russian army attempts to attack Ukrainian positions both on motorcycles and on foot, they mostly fail to reach their targets. The Ukrainian army's reconnaissance drones manage to detect the enemy very quickly. The coordinated movement of the units also greatly contributes to the destruction of Russian targets in a shorter time. September 28, 2025. Ukraine succeeded in carrying out another critical attack with a drone. This time, the target of the Ukrainian drone operators was a Mi-8 helicopter belonging to the Russian army. While Russian forces were moving freely in the war zone, the kamikaze drone carried out an effective attack on the moving enemy vehicle. A large explosion occurred in the helicopter after the attack. The helicopter then crashed to the ground shortly after and was completely destroyed, burning in black smoke. This attack once again demonstrated the power of the Ukrainian army's drones. They seem to view every moving object belonging to the enemy as a target. And the advanced FPV kamikaze drones directed at these targets hunt down their enemies and succeed in destroying them. This incident showed that FPV drones can be used effectively not only against ground targets, but also against air targets.